Welcome to the Candidates Forum for the Amherst Housing Authority, sponsored by the Amherst League of Women Voters in partnership with Amherst Media. My name is Phyllis Lehrer. I am a member of the Amherst League, and I will be moderating this forum that includes our candidates, Michael Burkhart, Jessica Ruth Mix Barrington, Nancy Schroeder, and David Williams. The mission of the League of Women Voters is to encourage citizen participation in government and influence policy through education and advocacy. We welcome you to join us. The meeting is being recorded. The forum will be rebroadcast by Amherst Media and available for streaming. Please check their website for details. Election Day is November 2nd. Early in-person voting will be available during business hours from Monday through Friday of the preceding week, with evening hours on Thursday. Absentee ballots may be requested until October 27th. For more information, please visit the town clerk's website. If you have any question for the candidates, please type it into the Q&A box on your Zoom screen. We will have time only for 6 questions, so we apologize in advance if we do not get to yours. Remember that you can find the information about the candidates on Amherst Media and on the town's online bulletin board. In addition, the League will publish an election guide in the Amherst Bulletin on the Friday before Election Day. The format for this session is as follows. There'll be no opening statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. The session will end with 2-minute closing statements from the candidates. The form for the Oliver Smith Will Elector will immediately follow this session. So let's start with the first question. It's kind of a long one, so if you'd like me to repeat it, I'll be happy to do so. According to the town website for the Amherst Housing Authority, the mission of the authority is 1, to preserve and expand decent, safe, and affordable housing for low and moderate income households, elders, and persons with disabilities. 2, to support programs, services, and resources that promote economic self-sufficiency and improve community quality of life, tenant empowerment, and responsibility. 3, to maintain quality of service delivery and ensure equal opportunity in housing. 4, to operate programs and deliver services that maximize financial and human resources while maintaining fiscal responsibility. In your opinion, is the authority actively working in all these areas? How might they do better? Michael Burkhart, let's begin with you. Oh, unmute.
The statement implies that we can actually initiate housing, and that's not correct. We basically oversee state-run housing with state employees. All these housing authorities are run by state employees with what you call local housing authority, which are commissioners who oversee how well that is done. We have no resources to move beyond the public housing stock that already exists. Most of our focus is on accountability and making sure that there's service to tenants. So let me leave it there.
Okay. Jessica Ruth Mix Barrington, would you proceed next? Oh, unmute.
Thanks. You can leave out the Ruth.
Oh, I could.
Yeah, you can. I am a challenger in this race. I am eager to serve our town, and but I cannot answer many questions in detail because I've studied the publicly available information about the Housing Authority. It's, as Michael said, it's mostly about oversight and fiscal responsibility and not about policy or program. So I'm at a loss right now, but I note the concern and I will make it a priority to learn about it should I be elected.
Thank you. Nancy Schroeder, if you'll go next.
Sure. Well, we do have, as commissioners, we do have a say in policies that come before us. And that could be, you know, what seems like mundane things like gardening policy or, well, for example, gardening policy, where it's you know, it's not important to a lot of people, but it's important to some people, and it goes along with tenant empowerment. I think we have to pay attention to those kinds of policies, pet policies. There used to be smoking policies, or that became a town concern. So I think we need to pay attention to the large view of capital planning and preserving housing, but we also have to pay attention to the day-to-day, not the day-to-day operation, but the policies that affect day-to-day operations. And I think we've been really on top of that with the staff. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. David Williams, if you could go next.
Yes, as mentioned by Michael Burkhart, that the Housing Authority, we oversee, we manage the facilities here in Amherst. Basically, our facilities here in Amherst are funded through the State Housing Authority, through HUD, and also basically through resources or funds that we generate from rent from the residents who decide to live in the housing authorities. We work very diligently to manage those funds and also address the needs of the cost of living in Amherst.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Williams. The next question is, should the Amherst Housing Authority give some preference to persons who are homeless in determining who is admitted to its residential programs? Why or why not? Jessica McSparrington, maybe begin with you this time.
Thank you. I believe, in fact, that the authority does. There's a recent bulletin, a public notice that says that people who are homeless, and they give definitions, have priority in placement. So
Oh.
I think that they already do.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Oh, thank you. Next, may we go to Nancy Schroeder?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I know that we have preferences for emergency, and certainly being homeless counts as an emergency, but it could also be multiple other things, medical emergencies included. So I think that we're approaching it as effectively as we can at this point. That's all I can say about it. I can also say I have housed, when I was housing manager, I have housed homeless people. And, you know, as always with tenants, some of it works out really well and some of it doesn't. So in my experience as a housing manager, that's just one of the populations that we work with. That's all.
Thank you. David Williams, would you go next?
Yes, I am not aware of policies that specifically directed to the homeless. However, the Amherst Housing Authority worked with the town of Amherst in accommodating homeless individuals. There is a process that they must follow through, and it's occasionally some of those cases are emergency type situations, and we're able to work with the town in addressing those needs. But to say specifically, there is a program for the homeless, not aware of that.
Okay, thank you, David Williams. Michael Burkhart, would you go next, please? Oh, unmute.
When somebody applies for public housing, they apply on a statewide platform. So that can be seen from anywhere in the state. And points are assigned based on certain urgency of need, which, for instance, if you're disabled, if you're elderly, if you're homeless, if you're somebody who's trying to escape from being a battered person. So all those are given a weighting, and then that determines where you are in the ranking, and it's all done based on that ranking. It is not individual discretion that's used. And homelessness is one of the high ranking factors.
You're done? Oh, thank you. Okay. Our next question is, one member of the Housing Authority's Board of Commissioners is appointed by the governor. What exactly is the relationship between the Amherst Housing Authority and the state of Massachusetts? Does the appointed commissioner have special duties? Nancy, may we begin with you?
Sure. I don't know about special duties. I do know that we do have an opening for a governor's appointee. And apparently we took steps once we inform DHCD that we are the state Department of Housing and Community Development. Once we tell them that we have a vacancy, and if they don't respond in a certain amount of time, then we get to go to the town and ask the town to, this is my understanding, ask the town to appoint a governor's appointee. So that's the process. And we're always, we have room on the board, in other words, for a governor's appointee. We have a tenant representative, and then we have David, Michael, and myself. So we would love to have a 5-member board. And that's my take on it.
Okay. Thank you. David Williams, if you'd go next.
Yes, I think the person that's appointed by the governor, the statements have been made by other board members that there is a vacancy. We anticipate after this election that vacancy will be filled, if not by the governor, by the town council, because the guidelines state that the town does have the authority to appoint after a certain period of time, and we anticipate that that will take place after November 2nd.
Okay. Michael Burkhart, if you'll continue.
Yeah, what I don't know is whether under the new town charter, the governor's appointee has a longer term. Under the town charter, we're supposed to have 2 years, even though the state requirement is it's a 5-year
Right.
term. But we're operating as though it's every 2 years. It may be that the governor's appointee will have the 5 years, and that position would then have some continuity that the rest of us wouldn't have. But we're anxious to have 5 members because we need a quorum of 3 to hold a meeting. And the more we have 5, the better, the more likelihood that we'll be able to meet consistently. So this is something we're very desirous of.
Thank you. Jessica Mix-Barrington, if you'll go next.
Well, excluding you, Phyllis, I see 4 people on this screen.
Right.
That's all I have to say.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you wanted to answer the question about the governor's.
I have no idea. I couldn't find any documentation about it, so I don't know about that question. But if the town can appoint, and 4 people have demonstrated interest, and 3 of them are elected, the 4th one has a pretty good chance of taking a 4th seat, I think.
Now, let me follow up on this. Is this the same kind of procedure that's used for other elected boards that have a vacancy? For example, when there was a vacancy on the school committee, candidates applied and the town council and the remaining school committee members interviewed those people and then voted on them. Would you know if that would be the same procedure for you? Anybody want to answer that one?
I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, it's supposed to be the governor appoints, and if the governor doesn't get to it, then it falls to the town council. But it's a governor's prerogative to go first.
But you were saying if the governor doesn't do that, then the town council can do it, or town council
Town
and the
council.
just the town council, not town council and the remaining housing authority people.
I'm not sure what, no, I believe it's totally in the hands of the town council.
Okay, thank you. Because I know with the school committee, when there was that vacancy, was the two boards did it together. Okay. The Amherst Housing Authority programs represent a key resource for affordable housing in Amherst. Should Amherst Housing Authority board members also advocate for the development of affordable housing in Amherst through other resources and programs? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Dave Williams, if you would go first this time.
Yes, we should advocate for affordable housing. As the information that you read about the Amherst Housing Authority, we are not in a position to build, we do not build homes or buildings to accommodate residents. We are not in that type of, that is not a part of our task. However, we work with the town of Amherst, also with local builders as buildings are being built in Amherst, and in some cases, they're able to provide, I don't know whether you call it a set aside for low-income individuals, and the apartments on the presidential apartments is one example where we have worked with them to deal with that. We also work with several of the local agencies in the town of Amherst and to assist in identifying and generating monies for low-income housing.
Thank you. Michael Burkhart, would you go next?
An example of what you're asking about is the single room occupancy that's going to be built on Northampton Road. Now, that was really the project of the, correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, the Valley CDC. But we wrote a letter supporting that. We also sent some money to support it. We had a small pool of money, and we definitely made that a priority because we know how badly we're in need of more housing. We have to wait for others to take the lead because we don't have the resources, but we're very committed and desirous of seeing more public housing. If I don't, you know, you can't rely on developers to build just public housing. They don't make the return they want on it. So they use Chapter 40B, which allows them to have a small set aside, but that's not the same as the kind of housing we really need. And only the government is going to build that kind of housing. So it's frustrating not to be able to see more housing created at this point.
Thank you. Jessica McSparrington, if you'll go next.
Well, once again, as the challenger, I am on the outside of these decisions, but I certainly, as a commissioner, would encourage at every opportunity more affordable housing to be built. I know that the Amherst Housing Trust is working on that as well. So is the Valley CDC. They're building the SRO on Northampton Road. It's extremely important, and that we be part of the Valley network of affordable home providers, because it's a Valley problem. It's not just an Amherst problem.
Thank you. Nancy Schroeder, if you'll go next.
Sure. I agree with Jessica. It really is it's a regional problem. And I think we need to be aware of that. One of the benefits of my being at the Housing Authority for 30 years is I remember way back when we had tenants hold meetings and practically rallies supporting the development of Mill Valley in South Amherst. We were very involved with helping wind development get that built. And maybe 20 years ago, we developed 22 units of family housing in 3 different areas, 4 different areas of the town. So in the past, when we have had the money or the resources, we have done work in increasing affordable housing. It's the game has changed somehow recently, and we don't have the resources to do much more than send some money to Valley CDC and stay active in the town, in the town's discussion about housing needs. That's it.
Thank you. Since one of your main missions is to oversee public housing, what do you do to get the input of tenants in the properties that you oversee? And how do you utilize the input? Michael Burkhart, if we can begin with you again.
Well, in the last couple of years, there's been the institution of a tenant elected commissioner. And that's something I'm really glad to see put in place, because this is a person who is a tenant of the Public Housing Authority and knows what it's like to be in that position. So if we have somebody on the inside now who's representative. In the past, I was involved in supporting the campaign of a tenant to get elected onto the Housing Authority, and she was. But other than that, it's difficult unless you have these tenant organizations that run, but they need somebody to get up and start them. Otherwise, our hands are somewhat tied because we're not allowed to get into the day-to-day management issues. So we're not allowed to advocate for individual tenants. And so the most we can do is try and keep our ear to the ground. And then if something comes up, ask the people who run the authority, what is going on about this? Where does it fit in terms of our policies? But we don't have a whole lot more access other than that.
Thank you. Jessica McSparrington, if you'll go next.
Well, I was nodding along to Michael's statements. I mean, that's how I imagine an oversight board to work. And I too am glad that there's a tenant representative on the board, because that is a face-to-face way to hear about tenant issues.
Right. Thank you. Nancy Schroeder, if you'll go next.
Sure. Well, I was housing manager for a long time at Ann Whalen and Chestnut Court and all the other properties that we own. So I'm running into people at Big Y and the parking lots and Stop and Shop and a lot of places, and they often have either good or bad things to say about management. So I have pretty good access to some tenants at least. And I worked at the part-time at the health department, and I ran the resident assistance program. So that was another way to work with low-income people for emergency financial help. So I do know quite a bit about the difficulties of living in Amherst without enough money, and I can bring that perspective to the board.
Thank you. Dave Williams, if you'll go next.
Yes, as mentioned by Michael Burkhart, that recently we appointed a tenant, was appointed, nominated, appointed, and selected to serve on the Housing Authority Board. And this is something that I think the discussion has been going on over the past 4 years since I've been on the board, trying to get a tenant association because we need to hear from the tenant directly what is going on or any challenges any of them are having. And this is over the past year that has happened. We have been able to appoint a person. The person was nominated by the tenants, and the person was accepted by our board, and we're working with that person, and we're very pleased to have that person serve on the board, because then we can get firsthand information about housing.
Thank you very much. Now, last question. How can the Amherst Housing Authority mobile voucher program stretch its resources to keep up with the rising cost of renting in Amherst and surrounding communities? Jessica Bix-Barrington, if we could begin with you.
I knew you were going to ask me that question first. Once again, I know it's a priority. I'm a good learner, so I don't have any concerns about getting up to speed on issues like this, but I am not current right now, so I can't answer it. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Nancy Schroeder, will you go next, please?
Sure. We get a limited amount of money, say for the voucher program, and you either pay more for tenants, individual tenants' rents, which then lowers the number of people you can serve, or you, if you raise the rent, you know, I'm not doing this very well, but if you pay more money for rent, then you can only serve fewer tenants, or you pay less of the rent and you serve more of the tenants. And that's the bind that we're in. And our Section 8 director is very good at finding a balance. We all know the rents are too high, and it's very hard to serve everybody and pay the amount of rent that we should be paying. It's hard. We can't do it. So it's a tough balance. And
Thank you.
she does her
sorry.
best.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, didn't mention it. David Williams, if you would go next, thank you.
Yes, as mentioned, it's a very difficult challenge that we have before us as commissioners. And I would say the executive director and her staff, we have limited resources, and living in Amherst and other parts of the state, the rent continues to go up, but the state as well as HUD have not provided the resources to meet the demands of the town. So we, our staff and executive director, must find a way to maximize the dollars that we have and also serve the individuals who are in need of housing in Amherst. And it's difficult, a very difficult one. And as I talk about Amherst, it's a difficult situation nationwide. We are not getting the resources from HUD nor from the state that we need to provide assistance and support for individuals who are in need of low-income affordable housing.
Thank you. Mr. Burkhart?
When you get one of those housing vouchers, one of the federal ones, you can use it anywhere in the state. And Amherst is one of the highest rental areas. So ideally, you'd think people would go to another community, but they don't really want to. They want to live in Amherst because that's where they're from. A recent piece of good news is there's a new development on Route 116 in Sunderland, kind of opposite Bub's Barbecue. And I know we have some tenants in there. And that's, you know, you hope for places out just outside Amherst that are cheaper so people can get into them. But we're, as Nancy said, we're just bound by, we have a limited number of money. We can have more vouchers and paying less money, or fewer people and paying more money. That's a bind. And that money comes from the feds, which means it comes from the Congress, and Congress has not been increasing that at all. So it was really hairy under Trump because we were looking at the possibility of that money being drastically reduced. I'm glad to say that didn't happen, but we're in a quandary as to how to work that better. There's nobody in the state who's figured out how to do this.
Thank you. What is your perspective about the possibility, desirability of low-income housing on the Hickory Ridge property? Nancy, can we begin with you?
I think it's great if we can do it. I think I think John Hornick is a terrific advocate, and if anybody can get some housing there, I think that would be terrific. I think it's a very narrow piece of land, so I'm not sure, you know, what the constrictions will be in terms of actual what's developable there, but I'm, you know, I remember the meeting he brought it up, and we were all going, oh, right. You know, I hope it happens. I hope it happens.
Okay, thank you. David Williams, if you'd go next.
Yes. Property, land, space is at a premium. And as just mentioned by Nancy, that it's a very difficult task, and I don't know whether anything can really happen with all of that and adding additional housing there.
Okay.
Affordable housing at that, excuse me.
Thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt. Michael Burkhart, if you'll go next.
I would certainly support that. I mean, back in 2017, I went through every rental permit in the town and tallied it up. Amherst is a $90 million a year rental market.
Mm.
Huh.
$90 million. There are people, 40% of the people who own property in Amherst don't live in Amherst. Some live in Mandalay Bay in the Philippines. They live in Arizona. They live in Montana. This is a big business.
Oh, Michael.
Finding property and being able to compete against people who are going to make money off it is a real challenge. So anybody who will create any kind of public housing is from heaven. God bless them. We need them. But in terms of the competition, it's really hard because, if you've got capital invest right now, people who are affluent will put it into rent into housing because you're guaranteed with no risk 5% return a year or 6%. That's safer than the stock market, and it's a huge market.
Thank you. Jessica McSparrington, if you'll go next.
I certainly support more affordable housing in Amherst. I think Hickory Ridge is a great place to put it because it is not only developable land, but it's also adjacent to a very lovely open land. So it has that advantage as well. I, of course, would encourage it to happen. And I also know that Michael and David are good to be cautious.
Thank you. Last question. How should the Amherst Housing Authority work to expand the total amount of affordable housing available in Amherst? That sort of goes with the last question. Let me repeat that. How should the Amherst Housing Authority work to expand the total amount of affordable housing available in Amherst? David Williams, may we begin with you?
I think he froze.
Oh, this is machine froze?
Yeah. David, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm there, but
Okay.
I didn't hear.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Did you hear the question?
Would you repeat the question again?
Absolutely. How should the Amherst Housing Authority work to expand the total amount of affordable housing available in Amherst?
Did that expand affordable
Yes.
housing?
Increase, yes.
Well, the housing authority, as have been mentioned earlier,
Oh, his machine is freezing.
we're not in the business of, we do not have resources to build any housing at all. We must work with the town of Amherst. We must work with the builders and the other housing committees, the CDC, and all of them to be sure that to see if we can generate new housing. Our responsibility have been more of maintaining what we have. And yes, we would like to have new housing as in some of the surrounding cities or towns where there are buildings that are vacant, that's been sitting there for years. And Amherst doesn't property in Amherst is premium. And just to say to build housing for low income, major challenge for the town of Amherst.
Thank you. Michael Burkhart, if you will continue.
Yeah, I don't know what we could do.
Oh.
You know, we don't have resources to do it. We have a big challenge maintaining a lot of the physical plant, which is 30, 40 years old. We have old boilers in some of the larger facilities that are finicky and require a lot of care. The state does provide capital monies, and we have to be judicious about which properties are scheduled for rehab and replacement. It's not an optimal situation, and we wish we had more to deal with, but it's not a priority in this country and the public. And so we're trying to hold on to what's there and maintain it so that people who live there have a decent place.
Thank you. Jessica McSparrington, if you will continue.
I think that David and Michael are right that the Amherst Housing Authority's hands are tied as far as developing new affordable housing. The commissioners can work as agents and provocateurs, maybe, to network with the other organizations in the Valley to support their work so that they can develop more affordable housing.
Thank you. Nancy Schroeder, if you'll continue.
Sure. Along those lines, I do think of it in terms of partnerships with other nonprofits and with possibly for-profit developers. Maybe, we can offer some vouchers or we can apply for more vouchers for a particular project. I don't know whether we'll ever develop again. It was wonderful to do it at the time, but I think that if we just stay very current in Amherst and visible and engaged in the housing discussions, I think we can find places where we can support other people or find our own way to increase the affordable housing, probably through vouchers. So,
Thank you. We are now ready for the candidates' closing statements. Michael Burkhart, would you begin, please?
Well, I'm glad for this opportunity to get the word out about what the Housing Authority does. I think the more people that know about it, the more we can build on what Nancy said of joining with others who are pushing for more public housing. Beyond that, we have a team of people. There's a lot. Let me back up a minute. It takes a long time to get on top of all the bureaucratic procedures and requirements that are involved in public housing. And we have a team that's been stable now for 4 years, 5 years. We have the tenant representative now on board, and we have a 5th position we'd like to fill. So we have the opportunity to have some stability in terms of the management from this end. And I hope that's what occurs. I hope whoever doesn't get elected would be the person that would be appointed to the governor's position. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Mix-Barrington, if you'll give us your closing statement, please.
I'm glad for this opportunity also to bring the Housing Authority to the forefront. I have to say it was my idea because I decided to run. And so there's a contested election this time. I think that there are 4 people sitting here right now and collectively across Amherst who are very passionate about affordable housing, who know quite a lot about it, and who all of whom deserve your support. I, as a newcomer, the current commissioners as knowledgeable and dedicated servants, public servants. I'm stepping forward as a from my sense of civic duty, that you volunteer to make things happen that are important to you to have happen. And affordable housing is very important to me. I'm just going to throw this out here. We're going to need a lot of affordable housing in the future because the climate refugees are coming. And they are not all going to be able to afford $500,000 houses in Amherst. And so we need to really do a good job of providing for the now, but also thinking about the future.
Thank you. Nancy Schroeder.
Well, I'll leave on a personal note. I worked at the Housing Authority for 30 years in a variety of positions, from bookkeeper to modernization coordinator to Section 8 to housing and asset manager. I guess I retired a few years ago. I guess I haven't quite finished with the Housing Authority, and it hasn't finished with me. I now that I'm retired, I can take a broader view of housing in Amherst. Before that, I was all nuts and bolts, and so I welcome a new voice on the board if that occurs, and I think we can help push the Housing Authority into a more visible and effective organization in terms of advocacy. I think we're doing pretty well in terms of treatment of tenants and keeping up the properties and administering the Section 8. But I think we can do a better job of being more visible and more and better advocates.
Thank you. David Williams, if we could have your closing statement, please.
Yes. The contribution that I have made over the past 4 years serving as a commissioner of strengthening our leadership with the Housing Authority. We've been able to employ an executive director who have in turn employed or provided the training or see that the training was needed for all of our staff. And if they have not been trained or certified by the state, they're in the process of having that done. So the leadership, we're very pleased with that. And I would like to continue to work with the director as we talk about the leadership. And also, as it has been discussed, the visibility of Amherst Housing Authority and walking the communities and gathering signatures to get my name on the ballot. I was a little surprised at some of the questions that were being asked. One, we hope you will not build any more high rises in downtown in the town of Amherst. I said, no, that's not us. So as a candidate here, I am an experienced executive who have played an important role in civic engagement in the towns and cities where I have lived. I am committed to the town of Amherst and the growth and development of the town as we move forward in strengthening and making Amherst, Massachusetts, the place to live for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the candidates for participating in this forum, but especially for being willing to represent the citizens of Amherst in our local government. Remember to visit Amherst Media to view the candidates' short presentations there and to look for their statements on the town bulletin board. And be sure to pick up a copy of the Amherst Bulletin the Friday before Election Day for the League's election guide. Thank you all for being with us. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate all your efforts.
Thanks.
Thank you.